Oh, he just texted. I didn't know we were on today. I'm on the chain gang. Oh, we're live. Oh. Hi. Little bit of chaos happening. Dan, hello. Happy Monday.
Hey there, and knock on wood, but I've got Wi-Fi and all sorts of technological operations going here.
Congratulations on your Wi-Fi. Yay. I love it.
Let's hope
Well,
we didn't jinx me.
it's a good thing you do have your Wi-Fi happening because we just got a text from our co-host Adam Israel, who was not aware that we were doing a Monday podcast and is, quote, on the chain gang, as he just told me. So he's not going to be joining us, unfortunately. We're doing a Monday podcast because last week was 4th of July and the city council had their meeting on Thursday as opposed to Tuesday. So we wanted to make sure we saw the meeting and could recap it for you guys today. But before we do that, we have a couple things we wanted to talk about. One of which is, I'm kind of excited about this. Dan, I think you might be a little nervous about it, but, oh wait, that's the scrolling one. Hold on. You can call us live to comment now on the Saratoga Podcast.
Yay!
Hey, I know, fireworks, excitement. So we love hearing from you guys in comments. We love hearing from people around town. I don't know about you, Dan, but I actually get stopped like a fair amount of the time from people from all different political persuasions, all different walks of life who, with feedback on the podcast, which is so awesome. And so we thought it would be fun for people to be able to call in I'm sorry, I have a child here. Tommy Dalton, go sit back there, buddy. I'm sorry, summer vacation. So we thought it would be fun for people to have the opportunity to call into the podcast when they were listening to a discussion they wanted to weigh in on, or if they had a strong opinion about something. And so we have that set up and ready. So people can call in with their thoughts, comments, concerns, and give us a ring, folks.
I have been getting a few stops on the sidewalk of, hey, you're that guy from the podcast. I'm like, yeah, I didn't know I was going to be bumping into anybody. I might have brushed my teeth had I known that.
Totally. So we'll keep that number up periodically, and I think I have it set up correctly. Hopefully there won't be any glitches, but we're really looking forward to hearing from people.
Is this just for me when my Wi-Fi goes berserk, I can call in and join?
Yeah, that too. This is actually a backup measure for your technological impairments. I actually hadn't thought of that. Okay. So let's get right into some of the news. There was a really kind of freaky situation at SPAC this weekend with a concert going on Saturday night that right about 9:50 was stopped, and they kind of put up a funky announcement on the screen at SPAC that said essentially, concert's over. We need everyone to calmly evacuate. Thanks so much. Please leave. And nobody seemed to know what was going on. And there was a fairly long period of time where the public was not told anything. But there was a lot of rumors on social media that there was a bomb threat. Were you following
a posting from a band member saying just that, correct?
Yes. I think the band's name was Garage. That was like the starter, the opener.
Or Garbage, maybe.
Oh, Garbage, sorry, yes. And they posted on Instagram that there was a bomb threat. It was a scary situation, though.
Yeah, it as a trooper, I've dealt with a number of bomb threats, and they're almost, this is pre 9/11 that I was on the road, almost invariably a crank or someone trying to stir things up, not an actual explosive device. But these days, you got to take it seriously. But this one was laced with some suspicious side stories, right, Robin? Would that be a fair way to say that? Or, some considerations that maybe it wasn't 100% what it looked like.
So can you elaborate on that?
Well, and again, this is rumor. I know nothing other than what I'm reading on social media, but it was plausible. That's why I repeat it. There was some wondering if if some of the acts didn't want to go on. I know the first two did, because it was such a low crowd, 4,000 people.
Oh, yeah.
That was posted on social media, again, for what it's worth, okay, folks. But it was a very small crowd, and stranger things have happened. But there is no, I'm just sharing what I read on what's going on in Saratoga Facebook page, right, of someone And I don't think they were stirring the pot. I think the person that wrote it, it looked like they genuinely believed that there was some credence to what they were saying. No proof. So I don't know. But here's my question. There were apparently, I heard 4,000 people. Is SPAC going to, if when Dave Matthews comes next week, what will they empty 30,000 people or more, whatever the number is? I don't know.
I think, well, first of all, I was very impressed, even if it was a small number of people there on Saturday night. I was very impressed to hear how people did evacuate, because by 10 o'clock at night, you've got to get people have gotten their drink on, right? So they're feeling good. They're waiting for the main event, and then to be told that you have to leave with no real explanation. I mean, that would piss me off. And so to know that people just like calmly and quietly exited, I was really impressed by that. And I was impressed by how the law enforcement handled it. And I think it speaks to the level of preparation that we have at these venues for situations like that. So that made me feel good. And like, kudos to everyone for acting like calmly and like rationally.
Yes. And as you know, I was there last night with my kids for Kids Bop. And they had another weather-related incident where they had to stop the show and say, everybody get inside. Those of you on the lawn, please get in the amphitheater or go to your cars immediately. There's a weather system about to hit. And that was professionally handled, almost like they maybe learned a little bit from the night before, because they did give full information. And that was well handled. They stopped the show for probably only 15 minutes. And then continued on. So it was kind of 2 nights in a row to have that happen.
In the rain?
I'm sorry?
I said those wimpy kids can't perform in the rain?
They could, yeah, I think it was just maybe to get everybody to get in and not rush in, give them time to get in. And it like I said, it was well handled, but it was like 2 nights in a row where SPAC had unforeseen circumstances that had to stop one show and pause another. But I commend them for the way they handled it Sunday night.
Yeah. I think the kind of like potentially shitty part about it is that it sounds like people aren't getting their money refunded for the tickets they purchased.
I heard some of that. I'm hoping that is still up in the air. I'm hoping that's a communication gap where they haven't figured it out yet. But I did read some of that may be the case. That would be horrible. Now, if it was an opening act, fine. But this is the headline act. People paid good money to see that headline act. Shame on you, SPAC, right here, or Live Nation.
Live Nation.
But they're partners. You can't just point the finger at one and say, "Oh, not us."
Yeah, but do you think SPAC? I mean, this is not a dig on SPAC. Do you think SPAC has any influence on Live Nation? Live Nation is like a behemoth. That's like saying SPAC has influence on like Spectrum. You know what I mean? I just think Live Nation.
And I know the fine print probably said if something like this happens, they don't get it. I'm sorry. I'm still I'm not gonna let SPAC off the hook. Again, more Live Nation. These people should get their money back. Period. And if the policy said one thing and they signed off on one thing, it should be relooked at.
I totally agree, but I think this is why Live Nation has like the shittiest reputation ever, because this is the kind of stuff they do. They just don't care. They make oodles of money off of overcharging people for concerts, and they just don't give enough. And so but it's just like, I just think it's so bad. It's such poor form, and it does reflect badly on SPAC, which in my opinion, they don't have any control over this. And so it's really unfortunate, I think, for SPAC, that Live Nation acts like this. And I don't think they have any control over it. But you're reading people's stories about they drove, hours to get up here to see Noel Gallagher, who, by the way, I didn't realize he was part of Oasis, which was like a band that I totally liked at a point. You drive up here to see the concert, you wait, then you have to leave, you're out the money, you're out the experience. I mean, it totally stinks.
How many people drove 3 hours, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there might've been a small group, but it sounds like there's some seriously dedicated fans in that group. So man, stinks.
Let's keep this story open. I'm going to hold, and again, more Live Nation, but still SPAC as a partner. I'm going to hold feet to the fire here. I hope we all do to some degree. You and I aren't exactly on the same page on the level, and you're probably more right than me as far as that. Probably. They're still a partner. They still have influence on the behemoth Live Nation.
I just think it's so to me, it's so important that we keep getting these kind of higher level, bands and musicians through Live Nation to get to SPAC. I remember years ago when I first moved here, like Coldplay was here, like there was just bigger names that were coming to SPAC. And I would like to see bigger names come back to SPAC, and that involves Live Nation. So I don't know how much leverage SPAC has over Live Nation. My guess is like basically none, but what the heck do I know? Anyway, I'm glad there was no apparently bomb when they swept the facility. Hopefully whoever, was responsible for this threat they figure out who it is and hold them responsible, because what a shitty thing to do. And
Absolutely.
Put people through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of security, police, public safety issues, there was a city council meeting on Thursday, and there was an item on the agenda that I think has been on the agenda for at least 3 times. And it's basically an issue it's on the 50-point reform for police reform resolution that we passed back in, I think, March 2021. And it's basically about seized assets. So you could probably explain this better than I could, Dan, but there's programs through the state and the feds where, if you bust, like, drugs are kind of the easiest example. Drugs or something of value in the
or
process.
A luxury car.
Luxury cars. Yeah. When you
the drug dealer is using a luxury car, or he's got $250,000 in a suitcase.
Right.
Those are seized assets.
Right. So you bust some drug dealer, he's got $250,000 in the suitcase, whatever. Those are seized assets. Once the person is prosecuted, everything's adjudicated, the guy goes to jail. If you're in this program, part of those seized assets, a portion of them, can ultimately ends up going to the police department involved. It's usually like a tiny, tiny fraction by the time it gets all the way down to like the local police department. So we're talking about like a very small amount of money. And you don't know when you're getting it, because it depends on when the entire trial is concluded and when the funds like finally trickle down to you. And again, the portion is very, very small. But what the Police Reform Task Force wanted was for that money to go to community-based programs that support, I don't know.
More of the softer things, right? The restorative justice things like that. And I shouldn't say those are soft; those are very important, but not hardcore police issues. You're not buying rifles with that.
Correct.
Or that's what their proposal is. Don't
Correct.
buy weapons. Do more things for community policing and things that help the community in a more human way, perhaps.
Correct. And when this was being discussed back in 2021. The problem that arose right away that I saw that was pointed out to me by Chief Crooks at the time was that when you sign up for these programs as a police department, there's a lot of like restrictions and rules that go along with them. If you accept this money through this program, there's a lot of very specific parameters for what it can be used for. And the way I interpreted it at the time and the way the police department explained it to me, you couldn't just decide that you were going to take the money and put it towards a community organization that had nothing to do with law enforcement. You had to use it for a law enforcement purpose within the police department. And so it's in this case, the number they're kind of averaging is it's usually about $25,000 a year, maybe.
I think it's capped at $25,000 a year.
Okay.
I believe I heard that at the city council meeting last week.
So we're talking about a maximum of $25,000 a year. Out of the public safety department budget is about $33 million. Okay. So we're talking about a max of $25,000 a year. This is the 3rd time it's been on the agenda. And the city council has been debating this and debating this and debating this because they can't figure out if they have the authority to say that this money should go to a community-based program, if they should do it, where the money has gone in the past. There's a lot of insinuations that it's been kind of used as like a little bit of a slush fund, that they put it towards travel costs for the police when they go to conferences, and maybe they're paying for like expensive hotel rooms with it. Or, there's all this conjecture over where this money has gone in the past. And I don't know. I felt like I was listening to like the most maddening circular discussion for like the millionth time about something that is really like minute in terms of bigger picture and budget of the police department. Did you?
But it was one of the 50 points. So, right. So it has an importance based on that.
It was, but I think that my whole issue with it still remains, which is it can't be used for an outside community organization even if it could be, you'd have to have somebody, which was a point that was made on Thursday, you'd have to have somebody who was responsible for doing all the paperwork and the grant work and implementing that, working with whatever this community organization is to actually procedurally get the money to them. And just that alone would require like a new position, some part-time position, to be the person who executes that mechanism.
Yes.
And you don't know how much money you're getting, by the way, and when you're getting the money. So it's not like an organization could count on getting something every year and use it towards operational expenses. And so to me, seems like such an asinine conversation to have over and over again, because it's really not something that's going to be useful or effective in the way that this 50-point plan wants it to be.
There was I understand that, and I think I generally agree. And part of me is saying, why did this, similar to what you're saying, why did this take so many months? They had some language in this, which was very good language that they could have come up with 8 months ago or a year ago, and it basically said, okay, this is acknowledging that it's the difficulty you mentioned, that there's federal laws, federal regulations of what you can and can't do. So the first thing said, and I don't know if I have the exact wording, but this proposal was, to the extent allowed by federal law and administrative regulations, this is what we want to do. Oh, brilliant. But that wasn't, why did we take so long to get there? This was, as I've disagreed with Black Lives Matter and some of the left movement in the city on many things, they're pointing out of some of these things on the 50 points going nowhere was legitimate. I applaud them for that. And they were the ones that brought it up. And once they did bring it up, things moved. So let me give some credit here to the city council, and that they are addressing this, right? They're trying to address this. I wish, should they have addressed this a year ago? I guess someone pointed, maybe it's Jim Montanino. I don't know, but let me just stick on the positive for a second. And I'm glad they're addressing this. I'm glad they have the beginnings of some good language to address this. It's only, like you said, it's only 25,000. So now this may also apply to state and other seized assets at the state level. I don't really know how that works. I don't know much about that, but as I understood it, it's capped at 25,000, which, as you noted, is a drop in the bucket, but still, as one of the 50 points, is relevant.
But don't you think that? So the way I'm watching this, though, is that yes, they're addressing it to address it, but knowing that there's roadblocks that they're not going to be able to get over, and so they're just kind of, I don't know, just seems very performative to me. And like, no one's willing to point out the fact that they're not going to get to the goal that they want to get to, and like accept that and move on.
I think they know that, or at least the city council, because they have that language, to the extent allowed by law.
Right. So this
allows them to check the box.
This is just performative.
And yet they're not violating the law.
Right. So let's just check the box and say, hey, we'd like to be able to do this, but we really can't, given the parameters that are in place with these programs. So we've checked the box for this point on the 50-point plan. We can't do it the way that they had hoped to do it, but we've investigated and this is what we've determined. Let's move on.
Well, I do think, Robin, what they did here was analogous to the no-knock warrants. Basically, they restated the law and just said, but they called it a victory. I think that's what the plan is to do here. My problem is, and you can tell me this answer, I don't know, is this not, within the city charter, exclusively within the police department and essentially public safety? And there, Mayor Kim said a number of times last night, the city council will decide, or I'm sorry, last Thursday, the city council will decide. And I don't think it's a direct power grab, but it's a back door. If that's in public safety, then that's where it remains. And Commissioner Montanino should say, I absolutely support this, but it's the public safety's decision. And as long as I'm in office, my decision will be in conformity with what we're talking about here, but it's not a city council decision.
I totally agree. They're trying to backdoor it and say, oh, the city council in conjunction with the chief of police will make this decision. Bullshit. You know who's in charge? The commissioner of public safety. The commissioner of public safety can work in conjunction with the police chief. They can work on it together, but the rest of the council has nothing to do with it. They have no authority. They have no say.
Yeah. They just, Ron was very artful in his wording, but it doesn't fly.
I know. And I cannot imagine it being in the reverse. And Jim Montanino saying, the council will work in conjunction with the mayor to figure out how we're going to spend money on the rec department or, whatever. I mean, none of the other council members would put up with that in reverse. I can imagine.
But I'm in somewhat agreement with the concept here. Moving with the times. I don't want to give up my principles, but I recognize the times. There's a desire to not, I'll use the most extreme example, not buy weapons with us, which a lot of departments have done in the past, and weapons are needed by departments. But fine, if there's something within the parameters of the federal law and the federal regulations that works here, that's still a police function. For 25,000, fine, okay.
Right.
We should do that for the right reasons, and we'll move on and we'll check the box. I'm okay with that. But the power grab here, whether it's direct or backdoor, Commissioner Montanino, he should be on this. He was starting to get there the other night, and then he went in a different direction than I thought he was going. So I hope he takes a stand here. And this is important. I think that we follow our charter, not just do what we want to check a box.
I totally agree. And where they left it was Commissioner Montanino is going to report back on how much money they've received in the past and what it was spent on. One of the things that was pointed out was that they are spending, they've spent, I think, their training budget already for the year on the police department, and training was a huge emphasis in the 50 points. Sorry, we got a funny comment. And so this $25,000 a year, it would just be kind of a no-brainer to steer right into training. Right. Could just be an easy supplement for training every year.
And that's brilliant, right? It's a police function, but it's something that those that want a quality police department, everybody should be for training. It's like apple pie, right? More training for police.
And it was a huge
everybody can agree on that. And for 25,000, I think you said before we talked, like that could be in the training budget there and gone. They could quickly use 25,000. So it's not like there'd be, what do we do if there's money left over? They need that, and multiple times more than that 25,000.
Exactly.
Problem solved, right?
Yes. Anyway, I want to move on to another issue of money that came up when it comes to the fire department. I don't know if you were listening to this part, but essentially, Chief Dolan has been on administrative leave for a really long time now, since like February. Because of what are, in my opinion, these like totally bullshit accusations that Commissioner Montanino has brought up against him that also it's like blowing my mind that it's taking this long to investigate what seem like really simple, basic, and ridiculous accusations. So I don't know why it's taking this long to even investigate them, but whatever. That's not what I'm trying to talk about. But the point is, the fire department's been running with one assistant chief running it, Assistant Chief Dyer, who also is running code enforcement and has like so much on his plate. It's ridiculous. And he's amazing at what he does. But the fire department needs more assistance with leadership. So Commissioner Montanino wanted to bump up one of the captains into another assistant chief role. So Assistant Chief Dyer has some much needed support. So that was an agenda item on the council at the council meeting. And when it was being approved, one of the things that came up was that the fire department has burned through all of their overtime for the year, that they've just like gone crazy with overtime this year. And when that issue was brought up by Commissioner Songvi, Commissioner Montanino responded by saying, oh, yes, that's true. But that's just because we had to hire 16 new firefighters, and we've had to pay for their training school. And their training school is so expensive, we've had to go through all of our overtime to cover the training school expense. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, that is absolutely not true. Like, I know that having been a former public safety commissioner, but I also know that having watched all these meetings, like I just know that is dead wrong. And Commissioner Songvi accepted that as a response. And I was so frustrated listening to this. And I don't know if you heard any of this, Dan.
That part I did not hear.
And would that, by the way, if you heard that, would that kind of like raise a red flag to you? Like,
to me, yeah, I would say you knew this academy was going on. You knew you'd be putting in a number of games. How did you transfer money from the overtime budget into a training budget? It wasn't unforeseen. That does baffle me. Now, there could be a legitimate reason, but it would require some explanation. But on its face, I give a huh?
Right. Well, so basically back in November when they were doing the budget for this year, there was a line for the training school for the new firefighters. It only had like Deputy T2 only put in like $150,000 or something. Chief Dolan at the time came before the council and said, listen, we're going to need like $350,000 to cover the training school for 2023 for all these new firefighters. Commissioner Songvi agreed, put the money in the line. The money is in the line for 2023 and is covering the training school for the new firefighters. So it has absolutely not affected the overtime for the fire department. What has affected the overtime for the fire department is that in January of 2023, the union sat down with the commissioner and the chief and requested that they have a minimum 12-man crew running every shift as opposed to an 11-man crew, which is what they were running previously.
I got to stop you real quick. Explain briefly a little more what that means in practicality, a 12 firefighter rule.
Yes. So, and I shouldn't say man, I should say firefighter because we have two awesome female firefighters. So my apologies for that. So every time, at any moment, we had a minimum of 11 firefighters on duty running our ambulances, running our fire trucks, running any component of the fire department. And so that was the minimum number of people that had to be on duty to operate the fire department. And if they didn't have 11 people available, then they needed to pay overtime to bring someone in to fill all 11 spots. So in January, there was a request to expand that minimum number to 12 people. And that was a request that I received when I was in office. And when I looked at the request and I looked at our budget, I did not see any way within the existing budget that we could afford to do that. And so it was a request that I had to decline. In January of 2023, the same request was made of this commissioner, and Commissioner Montagnino said yes. And so the minimum went from 11 firefighters on duty to a minimum of 12 firefighters on duty. That has burned up a ton of overtime for the fire department. That's what's causing all the overtime. Not training school, a 12 firefighter minimum crew, which was a change that happened just in January, which coincidentally was also when Chief Dolan was put on administrative leave. I believe he objected to the 12 person minimum because he also was in charge of running the budget and saw the same issues that he saw when it was suggested when I was in office, which was he didn't see where the money would come from. And one of his primary responsibilities is managing the budget and making sure he can get the budget to last through the year. So it was just really frustrating to hear that kind of misinformation come out during a council meeting and not have it be corrected, because to me, that's like a pretty significant piece of misinformation.
Yeah. And, I won't criticize him for the decision to go to 12 because I'm always, being a union guy, I'm always for more staff, more safety. However, and Jim Montagnino has had a habit of doing this. He's sort of myopic in this way. Once he did that, he had to realize, holy cow, I have to comply with that, right? And I have to, if the schedule doesn't have 11, and these schedules always fall apart. Somebody's on military leave, somebody's out on an injury, this, that, he's going to be short of 11. The only way to fill that is hire new firefighters, which takes 2 years almost by the time you train them and hire and so forth, or overtime. So he should have stopped right there, much like when he restructured the police contract a year ago, which I was again in support of, but he didn't see beyond a day. He didn't bring anybody from finance in to help him see beyond a day how that was going to affect him. Much in this case, he apparently didn't look to the future and say, okay, before I do this, I got to figure out how I'm going to pay for this. And sometimes you ask the union, okay, we can help you here. You got to help us here so we can balance it out. And I don't think Jim has that in his wheelhouse. I don't think he understands that, or at least to get a more even trade on that, because that's my view anyway.
Well, that was exactly my response when the union approached me about this. I was like, I would love to be able to make that happen, but you need to show me how to get there with the numbers, because I'm not seeing how I get there given the budget that we have. And Chief Dolan at the time was, saying the same thing I was saying. He would love to have a 12 person minimum, but he couldn't figure out a way to get there with the existing budget. So, help us get there and let's do it. But, neither one of us were seeing a way to make it work financially. And it's so irresponsible to just say yes and not figure out the financial plan. because then you end up in a situation where it's June and you've blown your overtime budget and then you're screwed.
Yes. And, I negotiated with the state of New York for 20 years, and at times it was easier. They said yes a lot. And at times the only word they knew was no. And when you wanted more money in a certain category or something that would be in effect more money, it would cost more, and higher staffing is that. Oftentimes the last 10 years in the Cuomo years, really all what I consistently heard was, okay, you got to pay for that. How are you going to pay for that with cost offsets? Yeah. And so you had to look elsewhere in your contract and decide which was more important to you. And they weren't going to give it to you for free. Right. Not the Andrew Cuomo and really the Hochul, from what I've seen, although I've not really been working with state government at any level, either with the unions in Hochul's term, but it seems to be consistent cost savings. And again, I'm for the members of both of these unions, the police and fire, but it can't be all one way. There's got to be a little give and back, right? Maybe it's not exact, but give us a little love back in another category where we can see some cost savings for what it's going to cost us here. I'm totally fine with that. And by the by, I know I'm going to steal your thunder here. You probably have this said. Okay, the fire department assistant chief needs help, but Chief Crooks over in the PD for 2 years was hanging by a thread, no help. How is that? How does that make sense? He has a bigger department, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he does. And well, although arguably now with the third station and hiring all these new firefighters, the fire department has. I mean, it's such an enormous moment for the fire department.
Both deserving of two chiefs positions at least, right? I guess you could.
No kidding. Agree on that. Although now, I mean, we're paying for 3 chiefs now for the fire department, which again, get your shit together. Commissioner Montagnino, the fire department, they need to be put back together. They need the leadership of Chief Dolan. They need to fix all their morale issues that have come up with this whole debacle. I mean, time is of the essence. This thing is dragging on, and I just think it's really terrible for everyone in the fire department, in general, in public safety.
I don't have your insight on this. Let me acknowledge that.
I know. I say I know only because I'm just close to it. And my gosh, give Chief McIntosh assistant chief. He's brand new. Give him assistant chief. He needs one. You know what I mean? Any chief needs one, but especially a brand new chief. Like, set him up for success here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So a few quick things because we're only 32 in. That's great. So another change to public comment was made this past week. So we've seen so many changes to how the public comment periods are set up. And
it's biweekly. Every 2 weeks, it seems like there's a whole new restructuring. That's probably unfair, but that's what it feels like.
I know. I think Saratoga Flash News said like new rules. And I'm like, yes, we do have a new rule. So there's still the 4 minutes at the beginning of the meeting that you can come up and make a public comment. And then they had a public comment period at the end of the meeting that you could make a 4-minute public comment in person. Now that's changed. There's still going to be a public comment period at the end of the meeting, but it's going to be via Zoom only. And you have to pre-register before noon the day of the council meeting if you want to comment via Zoom at the end of the city council meeting. So if you go to the city council meeting in person and you sit through the whole thing, and these guys are not great at time management, so it can be like 2, 3, 4, or 5 hours. You sit through the whole meeting. You want to make a public comment at the end about something that's just transpired. You are not allowed to do that because that is only for people who have pre-registered earlier that day on Zoom. Zoom people only, which is totally ridiculous in my opinion. And then also, who has the wherewithal on the day of a city council meeting to be like, you know what? City council might say something that I will have a comment on tonight. I better make sure it's before noon. I'm going to pre-register. I'm sure finding that link on the city website is going to be super easy too. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
You know as well as I do that by the end of August, this rule will change.
Right?
This will not hold. There will be at least a tweak and probably a noteworthy adjustment to the rule, if not changing it, throwing it out completely.
Yeah, my guess is the first time someone's sitting there at the end of the meeting and they're like, "Hey, I wanted to make a public comment," the rule changes.
Yeah, or they'll just waive it, right? They'll just ignore the rule. Okay, come on up.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they'll be like, "All right, come on up," and then they'll be like, "Oh, wait, Maybe we should let people cut public comment via Zoom and in person. New rule.
Yeah, it's happening. It's definitely happening.
It is happening, and it's a little ridiculous. I also have not. I don't know how you found this, but I've found it a little bit frustrating that they've been starting the meetings at 6 p.m. just because I can't start watching that early, and so I'm missing whatever presentations or public hearings or whatever's happening before 7 p.m. I'm missing.
And sometimes I'm watching them on tape delay. My complaint is get it on the video the next day. Don't make us wait 2 days to find out what's happening in our city government. They've got the wherewithal to get it up there by the next morning or afternoon, rather than waiting. I think it was posted on Saturday, at least on the Look TV. Obviously, they're not government, but they probably got it. Usually, the city and Look TV are about roughly the same time that they post. So I don't know for a fact it was posted on City Hall website on Saturday, but I think we should be able to rely on it being posted the next business day.
So. You know what I discovered, which I guess, I don't know if I'm the only one here, because usually it's posted fairly quickly. I've noticed it's usually on a Tuesday night. We usually podcast on a Wednesday, and it's usually posted before our podcast, usually.
Is it? Okay.
I go to the homepage of the city website. Agendas and meetings are the first button you see. I click on that, and that's where I see the city council meetings. Well, blew my mind this weekend because I was waiting for the city council meeting to be posted. And I was like, why is this taking so long? Why is this taking so long? Apparently what I was supposed to be doing is scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the website, clicking live meetings, and then scrolling down on that page to the live meeting repository. And then it brings you to a page where they're posted. And I guess they're posted there first and faster.
Oh. Boy, that is one heck of a treasure hunt. Because I went right to the first page where they've listed all the videos for the older meetings just 2 weeks ago. So you would, and then there's a blank for the most recent meeting a day or two ago. So you think it's not posted yet. If it's posted, it should be posted everywhere. You shouldn't have to go on a treasure hunt.
It was like the ultimate treasure hunt. And I finally got to the page and I was like, oh my God, I did not know this page existed. I did not know you had to go through all these. It's cuckoo. I don't know why it's so hard. I don't know why we would make it that difficult and to go through all these different clicks. And it's the least intuitive thing ever. I mean, I don't know why or how anyone would try to seek that out. I truly don't.
And there's a similar issue with that. And they've got those email lists for boil water advisories, hydrant flushing, paving. They weren't using most of them. And then we had a boil water advisory last year, and that function wasn't used. We had hydrant flushing, and I wrote to Commissioner of Public Works. To their credit, they got back to me and said something like, "Wow, this sort of got lost in the shuffle here." I don't know exactly what they said, but they gave sort of an apology and sort of acknowledged it, and now they are using it more. There might be 60, 80 categories of things they can notify us about that I signed up for all of them. And they're still not using that. They're using a lot of it. I'll give credit where credit is due. All the commission agencies are using it, but it still doesn't think there's a lot of categories there that I don't think they're yet using.
Well, so having had full access to the entire back end of the city website, I can tell you it's an absolute nightmare. I've never seen anything like it. But there are all these categories and you can just make up whatever category you want. So people over the years have, put in a ton of different categories. But during COVID, I was sending out nightly emails to people who had signed up for COVID alerts. And it's super easy to do on the city side to send out alerts. You create the email, you see the category. And so there's literally no excuse for not doing it. And you can see how many people have signed up for each category. And it's a significant amount. Especially for stuff like boil water advisories and more kind of emergency related stuff. So, if I could figure it out on my own, there's zero excuse, especially when we have hired a communications director who's supposed to be doing this as their expertise. There's just no excuse for the city doing such a bad job at outbound communication. Every single one of these city council people campaigned hard on establishing better communication channels from City Hall to the public. I mean, everything from Ron Kim promising that he was going to do neighborhood community forums every month. They were going to add a third city council meeting every month just for public comment. They were going to establish social media. I mean, they just made all these promises about outbound communication and really improving it. And they have done, in my opinion, such a terrible job. And their social media game is, I mean, they've upped it a little bit with this new hire, but it's really mostly just like ribbon cuttings. It's not anything functional or purposeful. It's not informational. And there's so much information that the city could be providing residents that could really help, and some departments try it a little bit on their own, like DPW puts out the paving notices and you get a little bit here and there, but it's just such a wasted opportunity. And I don't know, frustrates me.
I don't disagree with the specifics of what you're saying. My conclusion might be a little different in that running two different unions, and they've got a full staff. I recognize that, but it's so overwhelming. Even if you've got a full staff, some of the stuff, if they're trending in the right direction, but you're right about the candidates promising it. They need to deliver on that. But I give some credit maybe to the workers at City Hall that are doing this. It is overwhelming. It's confusing. One other point, they've got some outdated categories, things that are clearly outdated from 3 years ago that ran their life cycle.
Totally.
Need to remove those. But I'm going to give a little more love to the people in the trenches there, that it is exhausting and overwhelming. And sometimes you don't get the help you need from above. So you're stuck. So I recognize, I agree with your points. The conclusion, I'd say, if it's trending in the right direction, it needs to continue trending in the right direction.
No, I get that. But I mean, they hired a full-time communications director. So that position never existed. So if you have someone full-time doing communications for the city, it should be better than what it is. And it should. That
I agree with you.
And it shouldn't fall to the people in the trenches. It shouldn't fall to the folks in the union who are supposed to be doing their actual job that they're being paid for, and who are just agreeing to do the Facebook to be like a good person and like help out. It shouldn't fall to those folks. It should be falling to the full-time communications manager. So that's where my frustration is. Anyway, I digress. Should we do some cheers and jeers? Do you have anything else you wanted to touch on? I don't know that much. I don't know if we had much else last week.
No, I'm sorry. What's that?
I don't know if we had much else last week. It was a little bit quieter with the 4th of July.
Yeah, in the city hall, the city council meeting, is that what you're saying? That was quiet, right? That was there were no fireworks, right? No pun intended.
No, there was one comment from a woman who was talking about the 1,000-foot barrier between the school and
Courtney Manning.
Yes. And she was wondering why there was so Jim Montanino did not appoint anyone to the homeless task force. And so, she was basically wondering why public safety hadn't weighed in on.
He affirmatively passed on that.
It was
which I thought was a mistake. I was disappointed.
It was stupid. It was totally stupid. I mean, you actually can't think of a more important perspective than having a public safety expert or someone from the police department on the homeless task force. That's like really important. Yeah,
he should revisit that and say, okay, I'm late to the party here, but and a lot of decisions made, but this task force will continue, correct?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, actually I have no idea, to be honest with you. But if he were a normal human, he would say, I'm sorry, you guys were being real assholes to me at that city council meeting. So I had a bit of a temper tantrum and decided not to appoint anyone. But I've settled down now, and I'd really like to put someone on that task force.
It certainly, I recall, it was at a heated period of time. Not a heated meeting, but a heated period of weeks.
That's what happened.
He made that decision, but that was a poor decision.
Yeah, that's definitely what happened, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it felt it. It felt it, and it was just a wasted opportunity. That's an important position to a point.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. So do we have wait, can I actually play? Well, I'll play it at the end. But do we have any cheers and jeers we want to get into?
I'm kind of I keep combining my cheers and jeers, and this week is no exception. My cheer is I'm happy track season is here, and I am a small little guy horse owner, but that's not why. It's about the city. The city. There's much more to the city than the track, but we can't understate or we can't overstate how important the track is to the city as a whole, but also the economy here and so forth. So I'm happy for the restaurateurs, the hoteliers, and the whole economy and the people that work there. I have a family member that works at the track. I'm just, I love the track, but I go back again, not so much a jeer, but a concern. This industry is in trouble. I don't care what you hear about certain categories. All the horse deaths at Churchill Downs and at Belmont. 5 years ago, you'd have to dig to find out about a horse death, and now you find out about it within an hour, and rightfully so, perhaps. But you find out about the druggings and the suspensions and the so many different things going on. I don't know in this society how horse racing can last the way things are going. They're getting, in certain ways, they're getting better. HISA, the federal regulatory oversight of it, championed by Congressman Tonko and others. That was hard getting through. It took years to get through it. Finally got through. Is that a panacea? No. But it is a significant step, I think, in the right direction. Have federal oversight over horse racing, but so much more has to be done. So I'm so happy track season is here. I worry every day about the sport.
I don't know. I know like this much about horse racing as compared to like you're this much, but that's always been my impression about the industry, is that it was an industry in decline, and that Saratoga Springs was really the only bright spot of what seemed to me to be a declining industry. And obviously the ramifications for Saratoga Springs, were anything to happen to the industry, would be so catastrophic. And so, yeah, I share your concern totally. I always do think it's exciting when track season's coming, because you just kind of feel it. Everyone's kind of shining everything up, and I drove by the track and everything looks all red and white and sparkly, and it's exciting to see new faces. I live my entire life within like a 4-block radius downtown. So it's just exciting to see like new faces and lots of tourists. And I hope everyone does like awesome with their businesses and makes all their summer money. And all the kids make all their summer money. I know my kids are going to be out selling their waters and their Gatorades and all that jazz. So yeah, I totally agree. I will say one of my jeers, the freaking, I don't know if it's National Grid or whatever, that's been on Broadway doing all the like wild construction over the last couple of weeks. Like jeer. So, I mean, worst scheduling of all time. Yeah. So disruptive, so loud. I wanted to like scream. It's been kind of a nightmare. I know it's been kind of a nightmare for the businesses. So like jeer, National Grid, freaking coordinate with the city, could ya? Because it was really obnoxious. I hated it. I think they're done, but I'm not sure.
I've never seen so much construction in the city on both main roads and secondary roads, the Nelson Ave, the Lincoln Ave, the Broadway. Clinton behind Skidmore's closes this week. And I'm not complaining so much about it. I'm just commenting, holy cow, when did we require this much construction, or am I just changing and noticing it more? But there was a lot of Union Avenue. That's a good thing. I like what they're doing on Union Avenue.
No, I know. And you never know what it is. Like, I'm like, is this city DPW doing something? Is this National Grid? And it's like, is it the sci-fi? Because like, I don't know if you noticed, like on Caroline Street, past Caroline Street School, there's like, I don't know if it was the micro trenching, but there's like several blocks of, I don't know. Again, I don't know what it is. I would like to know what it is. I wish there was a little sign next to all these construction projects telling us what's going on. But that's obviously asking for a lot too much.
Maybe that's a job for my website, Saratoga Report.
Yes, get on it.
I just need somebody to do it.
Actually, I've got a kid here who would love to be your construction tracker.
Oh, I would love it. I don't pay well, but I will pay.
I guess I just didn't really have any. You know what? I'm going to share one thing. I freaking love having the fireworks back on 4th of July. I love having them at 9:00. I just think it is so awesome. I don't ever want them to go away again. I don't ever want them to be at midnight again. I just like cheer, 9 p.m. fireworks on 4th of July and New Year's Eve. That should remain in perpetuity. Always, always, always. They were awesome.
I agree. I'm glad Robert Millis did it again on New Year's Eve. And they're doing it from the roof now of the parking garage next to City Center. What is your take on that? I did see him New Year's Eve. I didn't see him this past week.
So I think it's fantastic. I think they're a lot easier for people to see like all around Saratoga Springs versus having them in Congress Park. Yes. For me personally, like when they were in Congress Park, I literally felt like my house was maybe gonna collapse. It felt like they were so low and close to our house, and they were so loud. Whereas this, even though my house does like shake dramatically, it seems like they're at a much safer distance for people. Yeah. And so I feel like it's safer just in general. So I think it's a spectacular spot, and I thank the city center for being amenable to doing them. I really think I think it's a perfect location.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah, it is. And they were just commenting, Commissioner Moran was commenting at the meeting, if you recall, about how that is an improved location. They could see him from Wesley, for instance.
Yeah. And I think it's so great because you can come to Saratoga, go out to dinner with your family, and then, go out to dinner, have dessert, and then watch the fireworks at 9, as opposed to like trying to keep kids up till midnight or wake them up at midnight. I just think, I know midnight is like ceremonial and like, New Year's Eve, whatever, but the 9 p.m. thing just like works so well, I think, for families. And I think it's just awesome. So,
and I think it's even earlier on New Year's Eve, correct? Isn't it 6 p.m. maybe?
I think it's not, it's definitely, well, I can't remember.
I want to say it was earlier. Keep it up. With your kids are a little older than mine, but yeah, I can agree to not keeping the kids up too late.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So before we go, I didn't put our cheer and jeer video up, but I am going to.
And I didn't even remind you.
I know, but I am going to put up our call number again, because I know that we don't usually podcast on Mondays, so this is kind of unexpected, but we will be back fairly soon to our usual Wednesday at noon schedule. Summer's just been like a little tricky for scheduling.
Did you find a picture where I didn't look like I had constipation?
No, listen, actually finding a picture where all three of us look like halfway normal is impossible, because basically in every single picture, I'm just sticking. We have a call.
My goodness.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
You're on the Saratoga.
I'm turning the volume down on my TV so that I can actually talk. I've done this a few times before, podcasts. Yeah, it's your friend Chaz.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I don't know which topic you want me to talk about, because you talked about a lot of them, from the SPAC bomb threat to things going on with the city council and what money they can appropriate and what money they can't and all that.
We did. Well, does anything jump out at you? Do you have any strong opinions on anything we talked about?
I mean, that, maybe the fireworks thing is where I should get started to kind of start off light.
Oh, you're wound up.
Sorry
to interrupt.
That goes, like, the main complaint I've heard from people is just with their dogs, actually. Some dogs get really scared during that. I mean, I used to have a cave hound, and they're like a big fluffy, they look like a cross between a wolf and a lion, and they're just smiling all the time. And they're a medium-sized dog, definitely not a lap dog, but every time my pressure cooker would go off, this dog would like try to jump in my lap, and sometimes he succeeded, which was kind of weird, because his head is taller than mine when he's sitting on me.
I can relate to that, because I actually have a terrible, terrible phobia of loud noises. And so I'm a sweaty, nervous mess during fireworks. So I can relate to all the dogs that are like hiding in corners and, having a stress.
I no longer live in Saratoga Springs, but I live close to the area, close enough that I'm there sometimes. But around where I am now, there were people firing off fireworks just kind of, during the noise ordinance hours, of course. They were doing that in their backyards for maybe a week before 4th of July and maybe a few days afterwards. And the dogs got to a point where, instead of hearing them, bark constantly afterwards, because I can hear all the dogs in my neighborhood, they would just bark once the fireworks started and then be quiet. I guess they got used to them. So, maybe, that's a thing too. I don't know. I saw Benadryl was trending on Twitter during 4th of July.
Was it really?
And that was, yes, it was. And I guess it was trending because a lot of people were feeding their dogs Benadryl to kind of chill them out for the fireworks.
Ooh.
And I guess it was something that worked.
Well, I will say, I know a couple of years ago, the laws of what kind of fireworks you could sell in New York State changed, and you could buy a whole lot more types of fireworks than you could in the past. And in previous 4th of July,
I didn't know you could buy fireworks in New York State. Any of my friends that do it, and they know what they're doing, they've been doing it for years kind of stuff. Any of them, they always go out of state to buy fireworks and then come back. To New Hampshire or Pennsylvania usually.
Sorry to interrupt. You are correct. That was, for any possession of even the smallest amount of fireworks, used to be illegal. I don't know when, but they did change the law some years back, and you can buy them in the state now. I saw one off exit 16.
Yeah, which devastated me. I was like, the powerful fireworks lobby got to New York State and changed it. I was very upset because, for exactly the reason you said, usually like the week around 4th of July, you'll just hear randomly at night people setting off fireworks in their backyards or whatnot. This year actually was the first year in the last couple of years I haven't heard that downtown, which was for me great because makes me so nervous and jumpy. But it can be kind of a menace in neighborhoods, especially around 4th of July.
Okay, I do have a few things to say. First off, I can't hear Dan. I knew he was talking because I'm watching the screen with my volume down, but I stayed silent for that. But I think I get the gist based on your response. Fireworks happening all the time. It's not fun and all that. I lived in Israel for 3 years, and I moved there just 3 months before something called Operation Protective Edge happened, where there was 50 days of rockets coming from the Gaza region and Israel working to stop that, I guess, in that situation. It was basically a war with, civilian targets, yeah. I guess.
Well, Chaz, I hate to.
I don't know. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but I had to deal with air raids here, accelerating motorcycles. I jump up because that sounds like the start of one of those,
right?
And I have to go hide somewhere.
Well, listen, I hate to interrupt you, but we're just coming up on an hour, so we've got to wrap up. But I so appreciate your calling and being our very first caller on the Saratoga podcast.
Yes. Very good.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
But call in again. Tell him to call in again if you can.
All right.
Thank you. Our very first call, Dan.
Look at that. He had some interesting thoughts, and I appreciated it.
I know. I do. I appreciate it too. I am just, we're right at almost an hour, and I don't know if you can, I hope you have not been distracted by the 7-year-old who's been pacing behind me. But I think he's about to bust in as an in-person caller if I don't get back to parenting, unfortunately. So thank you, Dan. It's been another great podcast. We will be back. I don't know. We've got to check with Adam. It'll either be this Wednesday or next Wednesday, but we will be back on a more regular schedule as soon as we can, and we'll keep you guys posted on when that will be.
There is a city council meeting next week, correct?
Yes, the first and third.
Yeah, okay. First and
third Tuesday of the month. So it will be next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for being the control panel.